Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Self Storage Podcast. I'm your host, Scott Meyers, and this podcast is sponsored by the Self Storage Private Money Summit coming up August 5th through the 7th in Dallas, Texas. We're going to peel back the curtain on how we successfully raise private capital to fund the growth of our portfolio in our new environment, which, as we all know, has benefited our industry greatly. Look, there has never been a better time to invest in self-storage, and my team and I have been preparing for the opportunities that this market would provide the seasoned self-storage investors, and that time is now. We have amassed a huge war chest of private equity partners since the last recession in order to be prepared for the next one, and you owe it yourself to do the same. If you're ready to go pro and give yourself all the funding you'll need to grow your portfolio, then you need to join me and my team in Dallas, August 5th through the 7th for the only private money event focused 100% on self-storage from the team who has amassed over $160 million in assets. Early bird tickets are available right now by going to selfstorageinvesting.com/private money. That's selfstorageinvesting.com/private money to grab your discount tickets before the special promotion goes away and before we sell out. That's selfstorageinvesting.com/private money to get 2 tickets at the special early bird pricing, and I look forward to seeing you in Dallas. This is the Self Storage Podcast, where we share the knowledge and skills from the industry's leading investors, developers, and operators to help you launch and grow your self-storage business. I'm your host, Scott Meyers, and over the past 16 years, we have acquired, developed, converted, and syndicated over 2 million square feet of self-storage nationwide with the help of my incredible team at selfstorageinvesting.com, who has helped thousands of people achieve greatness in self-storage. At the ripe old age of 8, James started to work for his father's company, Reid's Tree Service. Among many things, his father taught him how to work hard and to provide customer satisfaction one client at a time. At age 13, he started a lawn service that he ran and grew through high school and college. And in 2008, he purchased 10 mobile homes, which he refurbished and rented out. And in the spring of 2016, he then bought an outdoor storage lot that rents space to RVs, boats, campers, and warehouse storage for car services and small businesses. Then in 2019, he purchased and transformed a former car dealership into more than 500 secure indoor climate controlled units in Wood River, Illinois. His company, StorCo, then completed a conversion of a 2-story Class A self-storage facility with over 70,000 net rentable square feet and over 700 units in O'Fallon, Missouri, which was named Conversion Storage Facility of the Year. So without further ado, please welcome James Reid. Hey, James, good to see you again. Welcome to the show.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
Well, I'm glad we were able to catch up and be able to share your story and your experience. You know, we've talked an awful lot in the mastermind about your journey, but if you would just kind of, I give everybody your bio on the intro, but why don't you now just kind of fill in the gaps and let us know what you've been up to recently?
Yeah, absolutely. So most of my background has actually been more of a landscape contractor. In the last probably 5 years, got really heavy into the self-storage industry. And we actually met there in Las Vegas, I think of 2015, 2016, I think.
Correct. Yep.
So that was a great connection there. Mm-hmm. And what we've been doing recently is we've been focusing on conversion projects. So when we first got in the business, we were looking for buying existing properties, but just couldn't find any in our marketplace. So I kind of divvied a little bit farther into maybe doing construction and stumbled across opportunities to do conversions. So we've done 2 conversions so far to date. One was a Chevy dealership, and then most recently was a trampoline park that we converted into self-storage.
A trampoline park? You don't just build a trampoline park. What was it prior to that?
Yeah, so it was initially built as like a Super Kroger's back in the late or early 1980s, I believe. Mm-hmm. So and then it was another grocery store, and then when that went out, a trampoline park bought the building.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that I really wanted to do a deep dive on, James, as we talked on before the call here, is that, just the incredible job that you've done, not only branding, but just, really creating a culture around your brand, and then how you've really woven that into the communities that you serve. And so why don't you talk a little bit more about some of the things that you've done to, not just market differently, but how you've really created a brand and a presence within each community in which your facilities operate in.
Absolutely. I think the first step too, to go back to even when we first met, I didn't have a facility yet, but I knew storage is where I was wanting to be. Mm-hmm. And so even though I didn't have a store yet, I kept developing some form of a business plan. And one of the first steps is coming up with a name, and I probably own over 100 domain names because I didn't know what name we were going to come up with. So mm-hmm. I just kept buying them, and then just getting feedback and perspectives. We landed on StorCo Storage. Mm-hmm. And super blessed that we did. We think that it's a very strong name, especially with us. We're looking to go have a national brand throughout the United States. So we feel like that's been a great blessing to have that name. So even though we didn't have a building, we kept working on all the little things behind the scenes. So when we were able to find the property, we're able to just deploy everything that we worked hard on right into our first store. That way we're not missing a beat. So that's been proven a blessing to us on that perspective. Outside of the name, as you know, every business owner, you're able to do whatever you like to do with your business. And to me, I think owning a business is like having a great tool, and we can use these tools in any way that we can. And my background's more of a faith-based background. So we try to find ways to be involved with our community. And thankfully through storage, it's been an awesome opportunity. So most of our properties have large parking lots. So we work on try to host different events on our parking lot to bring awareness to different charities, nonprofits, and just bring people together. So one of our first projects was in Wood River, Illinois, that we hosted a 10-day fair on our property and just brought in a lot of people. And at the same time, there was a fallen fighter that had lost his life in the town next door. So during the event, we're able to raise awareness and money for the family that were going through this drama at the time. Since then, last year during COVID, everybody was like staying in their houses, and we were trying to find ways to bring people together. And we actually went out and bought a commercial grade drive-in movie equipment. So we were hosting drive-in movies throughout the year last year. And still this year, we're still hosting more movies. So we just try to find ways to bring people together, and not that we're trying to recreate the wheel, because it's not always easy. But the main part is that there's already charities in our local communities and all of our communities that we can just partner with, because they've already done the legwork. They're already super involved. So we just try to bring awareness and raise capital for those different charities that are already super involved with our communities. And we just try to use our business in a light. And not just that, Scott, like, anything, whenever you bring people to your facility, you're also gaining market share. Yeah. So by having these different events, everybody's getting familiar with StorCo, and their emotional attachment that they enjoy themselves at one of our events. Now, when it's time to get storage, they're like, hey, I was at StorCo, we watched a really cool movie, or they had this really cool fundraiser. Let's definitely store with them. So it's a win-win for both. But as a business owner, we're able to determine, where we focus and how do we really get involved with our community. So that's been one of our biggest ways. And I can dive deeper in some of the other events of some Google reviews and other aspects of how we did that. But that's kind of more of a broad perspective of just business overall, of how we can reach out in our community.
Well, and I think some of that will come out in my next question, but you're right, James. 90% of the storage business is, I don't want to say plug and play, but it is it is a very, the principles are in place, the building blocks are in place, and 90% of everything you can learn out there, if you dig into the business, it's the 10% that separates the successful people from the folks that either don't make it or just breaking even or never reach that potential. And one of those areas that I think you've done a masterful job at is that creating that culture within your community and really being a connector. So let's, and I know some of that will come out as we talk about this, but let's go back to the involvement that you've had really at the public level. So going into the public sector and reaching out to the local government. I mean, a lot of that had to be done from a zoning standpoint and getting them to buy into your project to begin with. But, as you mentioned, this is a needs-based business. And so having that awareness and doing the things that you've done is just so that when somebody does have a need for storage, that they remember that name. But you had already been setting up the building blocks, way earlier than that, and really prompting the city to say, hey, listen, we're looking for this to be, as you said, a light, and to be more than just a storage facility. So, go back and tell us a little bit about the vision that you cast within the city and how you got them on board to not only approve the project, but then just to really kind of almost give you keys to that block, in which your facilities are located on, to really do whatever you want. Tell us about those conversations and the approach that you took to build the rapport with them.
Yeah, absolutely. So one thing that I think that's helped me, so I had mentioned that came from a landscape background. I've taken people's backyards and made it into beautiful outdoor living spaces. So I love taking something and turning into something. And when you look at these boxes that are either becoming vacant or already vacant, I try to pitch to the city that we're coming in to do something great for the community. One, a vacant building is never really good for a community. So we try to share that vision. The other aspect is that most cities are not typically for storage, right? They're used to the old orange doors and just so on. So how do we sell the city that we're different? And on top of that, they're used to the building generating sales tax. Typically, storage isn't really a sales tax driven business. So there's definitely some things that we have to work against, but coming back to the plan is that we just meet with the city and we want them to be involved. So we find ways of what they want to do with the property. In the same process, showing that we're not your average storage facility by presenting what we've already done in other facilities, what our future plans are. So letting them buy into our vision for the future. How do we redevelop the site? Because we don't need all the parking lot. We could redevelop it to build smaller retail that's more in demand for their community. So it's really, you have to think of all aspects. And one of the easiest ways, not easy, but one ways is we try to envision ourselves, if we were the councilman, why would we want to move storage in this building? And if you can answer some of those questions, that will help you reverse what you share with the city. And like you've always talked about your masterminds, it comes down to people. They want to work with people they like and trust. And it takes time to build those relationships with the city and the councilman so they understand that James or StorCo is a positive impact for their community. And I think that's what's getting us across the board, because we're not just coming in for straight profits. We're coming in to really actually show this is who we are, this is what we want to do, and we'd like you to partner with us. Give an example. So we just had the city approach us about having the farmers market on our property. We now have a farmers market every twice a month, and that lead came from the city. And now we're generating more income and more traffic to our property. So building those relationships in the city has really paid off for us over the years.
I think it's becoming increasingly more important, and most of the successful developers have known this all along. Is that the zoning board and the city planning commission and the board, all those folks that have the ability to approve your project also are the ones who have the ability to say no very quickly. And I think many developers go in and they look at the building and they see what's in place and what it takes to be able to get approved, and they tick all the boxes and kind of come into those meetings. And I've seen them. We've been involved in many of those meetings, and I watched the folks that go before us. And it's almost as if there's this expectation to say, well, I've checked all the boxes, and it's a vacant site, and we've done everything within the zoning here, and so you should approve it, and we're expecting an approval. And first of all, that is I think the wrong approach to take in any situation, especially when somebody has the right to grant you permission to do anything. Whether it's my kids coming to me, they need to sell me on the reasons why not to say no, because usually the answer is no to begin with if it's something that's a stretch. And so for storage to come in, as you mentioned, it is a stretch for them in many cases. Because the neighbors usually don't want it, and they have the perception of the ugly doors, and it doesn't generate tax revenue. And so we have to go over the top and get them on our side. And so you would think that goes without saying, but I hope that falls on some ears right now. Some folks, when you're getting ready to go out to bid a project and the city is going to be your partner on this, they not only have to be on board with this, you got to give them every reason to not say no, but you need to turn them into champions for your project so that they are fighting on your behalf with the neighbors. If there's a remonstrance over turning this building into self-storage, that they are fighting for you on your side. And there's no such thing as too many things you can do to show them that you are going to be absolutely not only a good neighbor, but you're going to be an asset to the community. So anything else you would add on to that is, the approach you've taken with your two projects?
Yeah, I would say, the ones that are looking to either do new development or even conversions, or just trying to get something across the board with the city, is just homework, right? So most cities record their meetings, and most cities have recorded notes of their past meetings. So if you're able to get a chance to read someone else that's gone through the same process at some point, a year ago, 5 years ago, when you just read through the notes, what questions did the council have for that storage facility that they had concerns about? And how do you make sure that you cover those concerns on the front end, so you don't even have those concerns moving forward with the city council? So doing some of that homework is crucial. And then you typically have a councilman zone or district, just really get to know that councilman, because that's who's representing you in that district. So get to know him more, find out what the community is looking for, what is he thinking that we might run up against. So all that is homework, but you want to do that on the front end. So when you have that first meeting, you have less roadblocks to really overcome. That's worked out really well for us.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the other pieces I want to touch on, James, that I just thought of is, you've given multiple presentations at our mastermind, through the process of your projects. But one of the things that stood out and continues to stand out. And your approach is, first of all, you're local, which is good, and most people are when they start out, but not always when they embark upon a large project. But the piece that I think is so beneficial and important to that is that, yes, these are large projects. They are Class A facilities, and they have the ability. They're run by sizable third-party property management companies, and whether your exit strategy is to sell to a REIT or not, you're going to operate in a way that is going to be attractive to somebody else. But one of the things that I think people maybe get away from, or maybe they underestimate, is just because you build a Class A project and you put in a very reputable, and it could be a REIT, a third-party property management company, there still needs to be somebody that manages the management company and that is still driving the NOI at that facility and just doing all those things, because that's what it takes. Again, self-storage is a commodity. We need to rise above our competition. We need to separate ourselves. And you and I are cut from the same mold, and we realize that is having that community feel, and not just being the lowest cost provider, or just, hey, rent from us because we're the same as those guys, but we're $1 cheaper. That doesn't cut it anymore. It's all those things that you do to take it to the next level. So if you would, I guess, for the folks over that are listening, kind of summarize your approach to how you manage a management company, and your approach to still being a hands-on owner, even though the management is handled by a third party. Tell us, the mindset that you have, and how you manage the management companies to oversee your two babies.
Yep. So the first facility is managed by a third-party management, and I'm a true believer. You don't know what you don't know, and it was a pretty large project for our first project, and so I wanted to be able to learn from that third-party management. So I'm just involved with more of all the financials, and I'm always asking questions, and I'm holding them accountable for what they said they're going to do for me. So, and it's not just walk away, I'll talk to you in a couple months. It's having those monthly phone calls. It's saying, hey, we're on target, but how do we become more on target? Or this month we're below targeted amount. What can we do to improve that? So you can't just set it and forget it. It's actually still very much involved on monitoring their work and asking about their strategy. What does the next quarter look like? What are we going to be pushing towards? How do we lower this cost? So the more questions you have, the more work they need to do to get you answers. And all honesty, the more answers you ask them, the more understand that you're looking at their product, right? So if I don't get in touch with them for a very long time, they're probably thinking I'm not really watching over what they're doing. But by getting involved and asking questions, they know that I'm more attentive. I'm like, well, we're gonna have to get back with James because he's asking more questions. So you got to keep everybody accountable. I'm thankful that I have them because I'm learning through their process. And then our second store, we're managing in-house, and I'm learning a lot just from that perspective, just from over the years and talking with other operators to really strengthen what our platform looks like. So we got a combination of one facilities managed by a third party and one's managed by ourselves.
Okay, so now you've got two facilities, very, very similar, even similar markets. Tell us what you've learned, or what you're learning, or what you're discovering, or some of the ahas from managing in-house versus third-party management company.
Yeah, I would say that there's two different ways that we've been pushing the numbers. One's more of a they're both similar, but I would say O'Fallon has a stronger demographics. So it is a different group of people. So the way that we approach them, and with our technology that we have in O'Fallon, seems to work really well at this facility. I think that when you're doing the day-to-day like we are in O'Fallon, we're more involved, correct? Because we're managing our own managers and tracking it daily. Where on the third-party management, it's more monthly calls. So you're kind of catching up with what's happened, where when you're in the day-to-day, you know it every day. So we have our weekly meetings to go over what last week was, what this week is, what we're moving forward for next week. But getting to know the client base is helpful because you know how to market to them, how to upsell, and just how to be involved with what their needs look like. Because every store has a different demand of what the community is looking for. So you can watch trends of what sizes are selling more of. One site has truck rental that does really well. The other site, we actually provide a truck just to kind of ease that process when someone's moving. So it's just taking note. I mean, it's trial and error. You just got to get out there, do the best you can, and then start to make another plan to better suit that store to maximize your profits and reaching those communities or reaching those clients.
So this is probably a little more of a tactical question with regards to, doing your A/B testing on third party versus self. Our third party management companies, they give us a forecast, they give us a budget as to what this next year is going to look like, and that includes, a budget and forecast is it's everything. It's lease ups, it's sales of locks, boxes, moving supplies, everything, and those are the numbers as you mentioned. You meet at least once a month, at the very minimum, to match up, what is the performance compared to the forecast? Are they hitting the mark? And then if not, how do we change that? And that is, what an active, even passive owner needs to begin to get active in, is those places. If we fall short, the alarms are going off, and what do we need to do this month? Because now we're in the hole and we need to make that up plus for the next month.
Mhm.
And so, we are very particular with our management companies in terms of looking at the numbers, and then we need to hear a strategy behind that if they're behind, because we don't allow our folks to recast or reforecast. I've had property management companies that said, well, we overestimated, our lease up in the market, and we thought that the velocity would be a little bit faster, or whatever that looks like. And then the next year they want to reforecast and lower the bar essentially. And we've had to have some very stern discussions with our management companies to say, well, did you really, put the bar up here to get the business versus other folks that were sending their forecasts in to get picked, knowing that the market was here? Is it truly a market issue? Was it, were you overzealous, or is it a combination of both? And how do we fix this? Because we won't allow them to go backwards. And so the reason, and I am getting to a point here, to a question, so in your next facility that you're self-managing, if you miss the mark from the forecast and the budget that you had, do you give yourself the same amount of scrutiny or grace that you do your third property management company to say, okay, here's what the market gave us this month, and we are hitting on all cylinders. Here's where we need to make changes. And I think I do have the right person behind the counter, or maybe not. Do you approach, whether you knock it out of the park or if you fall short, the same way in your facility that you self-manage, with the same amount of grace and scrutiny that you do your third-party property management company? Does that make sense?
It does. I would say that we're more strict on our one that we manage. I think one reason is that we know the numbers every day, so we're monitoring the numbers, and when we're not missing our mark, we can immediately go into force, talking to different apartment complexes and reaching out to different companies that will help generate some additional leads on what we're trying to achieve. So you bring up a good point, but that I would say we're probably more strict on our own.
Well, and that's
because we're involved in the day to day, and we know that we're not playing catch up for the month before. We have a life. I guess we have our foot on the gas the whole time and monitoring where we're at, versus third party. They're great, but you don't have the foot on the gas. You're not the one with the foot on the gas. So you, I guess, have it more on cruise control over there, and it's easy to get distracted and just let them do what they got to do. But that's why you have to get involved and just schedule those. If it has to be weekly, it has to be weekly. If it's monthly, based on how it's performing and how they're relating information over to you, so you can understand what they're doing.
And that is what I expected. And so here's my point for everybody listening out there, is that when you're starting out in your first handful of facilities, and maybe they're not the size that you have a third party property management company or a large one, but eventually you'll get to that place. If you have the ability to have either a history to draw on of managing it yourself, or in the case of James here, he's got two facilities, one self-managed and one not, that if the performance falls off in the third-party property management company and they give a reason that, well, here's what the storage industry is doing, or the market is doing right now, and here's the reasons why, and not that they're giving excuses, I'm not assuming that at all, but you can point specifically to say, but yes, and my facility over here, this is our performance and this is what we've done, and here's some of the tactics that we've used. And so I don't think it's a market issue. As a matter of fact, we raise rates, and our insurance penetration is 7 points higher, and here's the things that I'm doing. It reduces or eliminates the reason for them to create any excuses and not to take that information or advice for you to implement into your next facility. So, this is the age-old question and balance of, do we use third party out of necessity, or is it a necessity if we're going to hit our numbers to self-manage? And when is the proper time to do that? So I guess that's the lesson here, folks, in all that. Is that fair to say, James?
Absolutely, most definitely.
So let's talk about some of the specific tactics that you've used that are kind of above and beyond. If you want to, open up the trench coat a little bit and share, some of the things that you've done with regards to your incredibly large parking lots. Farmers market is perfect. I mean, that is absolutely one of those. We do that at our church, and we've seen other businesses that obviously benefit from that. But you have really taken that to the next level with the ground that you have there at both of your sites. So can you maybe touch on some of your super secret sauce that you have there for getting awareness to your facilities using your parking lots?
Yeah, absolutely. So I mentioned one of our first events was only about 15 days after we first opened our first store. We hosted a 10-day fair on our property.
Mm-hmm.
We partnered with the fair company. The city actually got involved. They brought the concerts in the beer garden, so they made money off of that. I made money off of the leasing of the lot, and then the fair company made money off all the sales. So it was like a partnership of all three of us pulling together. And we probably had over 15,000 people come through those 10 days at our event, which was outstanding. This year at our other location, we had another similar fair. At the time, we had maybe 25 Google reviews. And I didn't want to I wanted to make sure we took every opportunity we could during our event. So we created these business cards with QR code readers where you put your phone up to it and it go right to our Google review. And so we actually hosted facility tours. So our guests would come in and do a facility tour, and we would give them a ticket after the facility tour, and then we'd ask them if they would be graciously give us a review. After that event, we went from 25 reviews all the way up to I think 173 reviews over those 10 days by letting people come in and view our facility and write a review of what they thought of our facility. So many ways to work that. And we just wanted to focus on our Google reviews. So being a new store, other stores around us have been here for 10, 15 years, have pretty quite high numbers. Now we're the leader in the Google reviews in our market share place. So that was really neat to see that happen. Right now, outside of my windows right now, I have a fireworks stand that's here for a couple of weeks, and we're going to have thousands of people come through and buy fireworks. And he's been here twice already. So this can be a yearly deal. So everybody's going to know to come here every year to get fireworks. So we're going to utilize the parking lot as much as we can. I will share that sometimes you got to be careful how much time you spend involved on building everything on your parking lot, because you got to stay focused on storage too. So it is a challenge at times to make sure that we're not overdoing it. To give you an example, we had a 4th of July celebration right around our grand opening here last year. No one was having fireworks, no events during COVID. So we had to bounce, or actually we had to talk with all the cities in the state to have an event. Fantastic event. And we had outstanding fireworks, but then we had a drive-in movie afterwards. And that was over the top. We didn't need to have the drive-in afterwards, the fireworks. The fireworks should have just been the final finale. So sometimes you can overdo events. So you got to be careful on not overdoing it. And that's something that we're working on. But so far, everything's been really well for us at these different events that we're hosting. Even I think last year, there was a lot of tension between the police force and the first responders last year. So we put together a competition called Hoops for Heroes, and we raised money for the backstoppers that basically support the first responders that fall during their service. And we basically brought all the first responders together and did like a basketball competition between them and the public. And it just turned out to be probably one of my favorite events that we hosted last year. So, we try to find active concerns, and if there's a way that we can do something, we're going to do the best that we can. So it's been very interesting, but very rewarding to see all this come together.
Well, so I will state that absolutely you can kind of get mired down in I mean, you and I are marketers and always looking for different ways to attract people. It's kind of like fishing, what kind of bait can we put out there to get more people here on our grounds and awareness. And so I'm always going to err on the side of maybe you can't do too much of that, but certainly understand that you can get a little too involved and get distracted from renting units. But I would ask, what type of, how far have you beaten your projections by over opening? Where did you expect to be at this point in time after you've opened your doors in both your facilities versus where you actually are?
Yeah, no. So it seemed like we're consistently running about 4 to 6 months ahead of the schedule when it comes to projections off of our feasibility study. I think part of it's, of course, the events, but I think also I'm just involved. I'm super involved with both facilities. And we just want to keep running effectively and efficiently. But it's just like your facilities, you're focused on your employees. I try to find local help that's already involved with the community. So they have their own following and they have their own group of people they know that are going to store here because they work here. So we try to strategize even on our hires culture, but also what are they already doing in their past life that's going to draw attention to our stores. We've been really blessed with the employees that we have working at each facility, because if you think about it, most facilities are one full-time, maybe one part-time, and you're really relying on those employees to really drive numbers. It's not like they're watching 1 or 2 homes. They're watching 500 to 800 units. They really need to be selling and promoting the store. And that's an everyday job for us as owners, is how do we spread our message? How do our employees are in line with our vision? And how do we continue to push our numbers and push culture within our company? It's even challenging because it's even a smaller group, right? So like our stores we're not always at our facilities. So how do we continue to cultivate that culture? And it's not an easy task. It's probably one of the harder tasks in business, is to really share that and get that message out.
Agreed. And we spend a lot of time talking about that. I mean, your culture is your business, and we're leaning more on that all the time. And, that is also centered around the larger conversation of it's hard to find good help these days. And not only because, the market is going well, but it truly is. It's more difficult to find folks that are aligned with your culture, and we won't bend on that. So there's a long list of personality traits that we're looking for, and we do a lot of background checks to make sure that we've got the right fit, because that is what is going to drive their performance, is if they buy in to what you are a part of and they want to subscribe to that. And so for your organization, James, that is that means a lot. They have to see what you're doing and realize that they're going to have an active owner. But most people, at the end of the day, they do want to be a part of something great rather than just collecting a paycheck. And so again, the proof is in the pudding. 4 to 6 months ahead of schedule. I certainly don't think that there's that anybody would fault you for the extra mile that you're going. And let's face it, business is all about, business is pretty basic when it comes right down to it. Every single industry has a business model that you can follow. Some people do it well, other people do it not so good. But then it's the people that really, belabor the small points and have that marketing mindset and wake up every morning saying, how can I make my business better? Those are the folks that succeed and do the things that you're doing so that you are 4 to 6 months ahead. Because business is, first of all, survival, and then it's success. And we have to do, in my opinion, you have to do everything to make sure that you ensure success, because that doesn't come without survival first. So you do have to really look at all those little things that separate us, especially in our industry, because again, it is a commodity. We have to separate ourselves. So James, I appreciate you sharing that. I appreciate you sharing your time. We have you on here because you've just done a masterful job at your facilities. So as we wind up here, why don't let's do 2 things. I have 2 questions for you as we wrap up. Tell us your take on maybe the top 1 or 2 areas in which you think that people need to focus on as they're starting and getting into the self-storage business. And then also, if there's any resource that you'd like to share, a book or anything else that, or even just some words of wisdom that maybe a mentor has given you, that you would leave as a parting shot for folks.
Absolutely. So I would say that, I guess what I live by is that you don't know what you don't know. And if you can really live by that, that means always ask questions. No matter how successful the person is that may be hard to maybe ask that question to, just get around them, read their books, ask questions. I'm always asking questions because I only know so much, and I don't know what I don't know. So I'm going to go find out what I don't know. So I would say always be flexible, be willing to be uncomfortable by asking questions and raising your hand in front of others, no matter how you feel, because you need to be able to learn more about where you want to go. So I would just say stay flexible would probably be my first aspect. The other idea is, I could say always keep learning, but just keep strategizing, keep writing down your ideas. I think my favorite part of business is that you can go any direction, but you need to find what direction you're going and keep working down that line so you're not stagnant, always be improving. And that's why I always encourage reading books, learning about other operators. And I would say part of the biggest success for me in both my businesses, I've had very strong mentors in both of my businesses. If you can imagine running through the woods, and as fast as you could run much faster if you're following somebody who knows the trail ahead of you than versus going through the woods by yourself. So I always try to find mentors in my life, in all aspects of life, but even in business, so I can ask questions and I can follow behind their trails as well as I can. So if I was to give someone one piece of advice, is connect with a mentor. And if you cannot connect with a physical mentor, read their books. They're going to pour into their books as much as they can to spread their knowledge to others. So I'd always find a way to connect with a mentor.
I would agree. I still have mentors to this day. And to your point, I think you always need to remain a student of the business. I am humble enough to say that I certainly don't know everything about this business, and continue to learn literally each and every day. And, when we get together at our mastermind, I've been in the business for 16 years now, and I run the mastermind. But I did this to put the people in the room that are smarter than me in certain aspects. And I come out of our mastermind still with pages of notes of things to implement in my business that I've learned from folks in the room that are just doing the exact same things. They're learning from different places and pulling from here and there. And it's all just adding these little pieces to the business. And in some cases, even business shifts that we undertake. But that only comes from constantly being aware and recognizing you need to be a student. No matter how good and how successful you are, you still need to be a student of your industry. And you can learn from other folks, even if they're younger, even if they're less experienced in the industry. They may have a different twist or something that they've heard or learned somewhere that you can implement in your business. That just, once again, just that 1 degree, if we just get 1 degree better all the time, we will continue to run successful businesses and reach where we need to be. So appreciate that advice, James. And once again, always great spending time with you. Glad that we finally were able to get you on the podcast to share a little bit about your business and what you've done, the successes you've had, and your approach to it with everybody else here on the podcast. And so looking forward to seeing you in the Ozarks at our next mastermind. So back in your home state. So looking forward to that as well.
Yeah, it should be great. And when I was talking about the mentorship too, is like, that was part of what we've done with your group and your mastermind, is like being around other successful business owners where we can learn from those that are ahead of us and really, I guess, raise the bar of our quality of what we're trying to achieve. And I try to make it to every single mastermind because I always take something away from it. And not just that, just the culture and the relationships that we're building in your mastermind has been great. Even from the very beginning when I met you in Las Vegas in 2016 to the Storage Academy, because I want to learn as much as I can. I think I went to your Storage Academy, then maybe one of your money summits that I went to, learn a whole bunch there. So I was always told too that the more you learn, the more you earn. And so the more I can learn about storage, the more opportunities I'll have to broaden. But it really comes down to relationships and just building those mentorships that really push you through the woods as strong as you can. So very thankful that you've got a great company, great group of very mastermind that's been really good for us.
Well, I appreciate that, James, and appreciate having you there and your contribution as well. But it's a pretty incredible community we've created. So with that, again, James, thanks so much for your time, and looking forward to getting back together again. So if people want to reach out and find you, what is the best way for them to get in touch with you?
Yeah, probably my email is probably the best, Scott. It's going to be james.reid, R-E-I-D, @storcosolutions.com.
Awesome. Once again, James, thanks so much. Looking forward to seeing you soon. Take care.
Perfect. Thank you, Scott.
Hey gang, wait, 3 things before you leave. First, don't forget to subscribe to the Self Storage Podcast and turn on your notifications so you never miss another episode. And while you're there, please leave us a 5-star review if you like the show. Second, be sure to share your favorite episodes and more via Instagram, and don't forget to tag us. And lastly, head to the links in the show description and hit the follow and subscribe button on Twitter and Facebook to get a front row seat as we grow and scale our business and bring you along with us. Take care.